started fighting for these ideas, they were moonshot ideas, right? But what I learned is that you don't get what you don't fight for. And folks deserve that we fight for them. They deserve to thrive, and we have to stop negotiating with ourselves and dare to dream. So how about this? How about we push for real healthcare reform, where some guy behind a desk doesn't get to decide whether you live or die, and we get rid of prior authorization? How about
Minnesota's Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan is running for the United States Senate, and she's made it clear that she is going to be the fighter working people need. She's not taking any money from any corporate PACs, and she's there to represent the people of Minnesota. I got the chance to reconnect with my good friend Peggy Flanagan to talk about not only her campaign, but to also get her take on what just happened a couple of days ago when those 8 Senate Democrats caved and ceded ground to the Republicans when it came to what was going on in D.C. Take a listen to what she had to say. And joining me now is one of my absolute favorite people in the world, Lieutenant Governor from the amazing, beautiful state of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, who, listen, your job is important, Peggy, I'll give you that much. But I think it's even more important right now as you're wearing different hats. Your candidacy to be a United States Senator representing the people of Minnesota is really what I am excited about. So thank you for coming back to the Katie Phang News Channel and to kind of, touch base and get back up to speed.
Absolutely, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just really glad to be here.
So I want to start with some breaking news that perhaps some people didn't catch, but I am thrilled to announce that you have received the endorsement of Bernie Sanders. Talk about why that endorsement means so much to you in your campaign.
Absolutely. I am just so honored to have the endorsement of Senator Bernie Sanders, someone who has spent his entire life fighting for working people. And I think the thing about this moment is that we have to give it everything we've got to help people afford the lives that they want to live. Folks know that the system is rigged. That's something that, Senator Sanders has been talking about for a very long time. And I think we are in a moment right now where it is so clear that greedy corporations, the folks at the very, very top, are doing incredibly well, and that we are being left to fight for scraps, and that's not okay. And that corporations who have incredible amounts of power in Washington, D.C., are putting their thumb on the scale in elections. Oftentimes we see these seats going to the highest bidders. And that's why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in, frankly, with folks on both sides of the aisle. And so for Senator Sanders, who spent, his entire life fighting for working folks, I am excited to join him in that fight, to serve with him in the U.S. Senate, and to make sure, that people have an opportunity to live the lives that they want to live. And he's been fighting this battle for a long time, and I'm just excited to join him in the fight.
For people who are catching up, it's Tina Smith, the senator. She's retiring, and so that's her seat that's opening up. And you actually have a primary that you're having to run in. You are not just the Democratic nominee at this point. The reality is your message has been consistent since day one, and that's part of the reason why I am such a fan of yours. You have made it very clear that you believe in the power of the people. That has been a huge part of the role that you have played as lieutenant governor, standing alongside, an incredible Governor Walz, right? And the other thing that you've also expressed is that your lived experience to the point where you are in your life right now shows that you understand and have empathy for people that just want to live and earn a living wage, a livable earning wage that's reasonable, and that they're able to participate in the democratic process without, undue interference from the government and others that just want to dictate how they live their lives.
That's right. I mean, I grew up on the margins, right? I know what it feels like to think the bottom could fall out at any moment. And there are way too many people who feel that way right now. And frankly, I think if there were more folks who are serving in the U.S. Senate who, relied on Section 8 for their housing, relied on SNAP to keep food on the table, or, Medicaid was their healthcare growing up. I mean, that is my lived experience. I think if we had more folks serving in the US Senate who knew what it meant to try to stretch $20 through the end of the month, that we would not be in the position that we are in with this big, ugly bill, the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, and frankly, the just nibbling around the edges of policies versus what it is that we actually need. And I think so much of that is grounded in the fact that, again, corporations are buying these elections, right? I do have a primary, and I'm the only person in this primary election who has said that I'm not going to take corporate PAC money, because corporations have plenty of representation in Washington. It's the rest of us who need it. And so I don't want to be beholden to big pharma because, you can't in one hand say, I'm going to hold you accountable to lower the cost of prescription drugs, and then have your other hand outstretched, for a check. People are smarter than that. And so, that for me is what this entire campaign is about. It is about, are we going to choose a candidate with progressive values, has been fighting for working folks her entire career, or are we going to pick a corporate Democrat? It is the same fight that I think is facing our party, is playing out here in Minnesota, which is why I think the Sanders endorsement is so powerful in this moment, because people understand what that means.
Yeah, and to be clear, Senator Sanders said that you have, quote, the guts to stand up for working people against the billionaires and the corporate interests. And you didn't get the benefit of watching the introduction that is going to be played before this episode, but there's a video of you on social that I played, wherein you said that you don't get what you don't fight for. And I feel like that just resonates so deeply, because it's true. There is a disconnect between the electeds currently in DC. Not all of them, but please forgive the generalization. But there's a disconnect between the electeds in DC and the people that put them there in the first place. The people that don't live in DC, right? That voted for somebody to go and be their mouthpiece for them, to fight for them. So when we see the rolling over and playing dead that we just saw a couple of days ago, it hurts. I said on my channel here, I woke up feeling betrayed on Monday morning, and I'm not being melodramatic, but we are in this fight together. At least we're supposed to be. And then the people who are in the positions of power to help us are like, well, we did 40 something plus days. By the way, the shutdown's not over.
That's right.
We've done 40 plus something days of a shutdown. People have suffered. Some of us, including me, we've gone to court to fight for SNAP benefits and the, illegal reductions of forces that are happening. But hey, that was all for naught. I mean, your thoughts?
I mean, my thoughts are, I'm pissed. Right.
Good.
And I'm disappointed. And on Sunday night, it would have never even occurred to me,
Same.
right, to take this vote. Capitulating to Donald Trump and congressional Republicans in this moment, when we are facing an authoritarian regime, should not be an option that is on the table at all for us, especially as Democrats. And the thing that was so difficult is that we clutched, right, defeat from the jaws of victory, when on Tuesday we saw people show up for us, up and down the ballot, all across the country, saying we are with you in this fight. And to simply turn our backs on those folks is completely unacceptable when we were winning. Yeah. And so now we have to work to rebuild that trust and that enthusiasm. And it is the moment for people to decide, you get to pick your fighter. Who do you want? What kind of leader do you want fighting for you? And this is the moment. We cannot back down. And it feels like somehow that, these 8 Senate Democrats were like, in 3 years, when Trump's out of the White House, things will get back to normal. This is the fight. It is literally right now. So it wouldn't have even occurred to me. And I think the outrage is completely justified, and we deserve so much more than weak leadership that is completely out of touch with what is happening in the lives of real people.
Yeah, and to clarify for those of you that are tuning in, of the 8 Senate Democrats, 2 of them are actually retiring at the end of term, and the other 6 are not even up again until 2028 and 2030, which is a long time away. You know, another thing that you said as well was Senate Democrats walked away from a fight because in New Jersey and Virginia, for example, both Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger ran on platforms that included predominantly a pillar of affordability.
Right.
That is something that you have been acutely tuned into, this idea of people being able to achieve affordability in a way that sustains them as a family or just as an individual. And clearly people were interested in that because we converted 7% of November 2024 Trump voters to vote for Spanberger and Sherrill. So there was something that was winning about that argument. And you mentioned SNAP. Look, I understand that one of the legs of this agreement, this handshake deal, is a, SNAP benefit resumption as a part of the minibus of 3 appropriations bills. But I feel like people are forgetting the big bullshit bill, Peggy.
That's right.
And
I mean,
big bullshit bill was $186 billion in SNAP benefits cut by Republicans already going into that budget.
That's exactly right. So it didn't even get us back to whole, right?
Yes.
It's just simply because Donald Trump broke the law, right? And said, like, I'm not going to give these benefits, right? And needed the court to tell him over and over and over again, right? To give these SNAP benefits for folks. And just again, to be clear, these are children, seniors, people who are working full time. And so like, just to be clear, but I think, for me, the outrage is justified because we were winning, but also the outrage is justified because what we are actually fighting for is so much more. I think it is so clear to me as I've been traveling across the state of Minnesota. We have done over 100 events. And no matter where I am, the issue of healthcare comes up over and over and over again, right? I met a librarian who is married to a farmer, and they buy in. And they buy in to the market, and they pay $15,000 a year for their deductible. And she just went to the doctor for a 5-minute med check that cost her $600.
Oh my gosh.
And so like this fight, right, to keep, the subsidies in place for the ACA, that is a fight worth fighting for these families. But beyond that, we have to get really clear that that's not enough. We need Medicare for all. Like, I am so clear after traveling across the state that we need universal health care because people are just either going without or getting kicked into bankruptcy for going to the emergency room, and it is outrageous. So in addition to just this fight, we have to be clear about like, what is our long-term vision for what people actually need, and to have to say that to folks, because people are done with, and we just have to be bold.
Do you think, Peggy, people have the appetite now for universal health care for all? I have been advocating for abandoning labels like progressive because I don't think that it should be a particularly, quote, progressive or radical idea for people to have livable wages and to be able to have access to reasonable, affordable health care. I feel like, for a long time, though, this idea of universal health care for all, for example, from Senator Sanders, right? For example, right, that people found that to be so revolutionary. Do you think there is an appetite right now from constituents that would be willing to put that as an important pillar for why they vote for you in Minnesota?
Absolutely. And we are hearing that everywhere we go. I will tell you that Medicare for all and getting rid of prior authorization, so some dude behind a desk doesn't get to decide whether you get the life-saving healthcare you need, if you live or die, right? Those are the lines, right, in my speeches and in the conversations that I'm having with folks that get the loudest cheers because people get it now. And so perhaps the bright spot out of, the walking away from this could be that we have now set the stage to be very clear that it is Republicans, right, who have said, like, we don't care about these rising healthcare costs. And we have started to lay the groundwork to say, when you see your healthcare costs go up next year, you can blame Donald Trump and the congressional Republicans, but also like that can't be enough, right? We have to tell people what we are for, which is universal access to healthcare. And, like you said, like if it's, one label over the other, like people just need care, and that I think is worth it. And maybe a few years ago, folks couldn't get it on board, but like they're very clear now what this means for their family. And like we have to run as hard and as fast as we can and demonstrate to people that we will fight for them. Otherwise, this is a lost opportunity in this moment.
I had the pleasure of interviewing Erica Payne, the founder of Patriotic Millionaires, the other day, and I was noting that the video interview that it did for her is chugging along quite well because she has talked about Patriotic Millionaires, which I want to note has actually endorsed your campaign as well. And I'm not surprised because thematically you guys are on the same page. It's the idea of taxing the rich and leveling out the disparity in income and at least raising the, minimum wage to a point where people would actually live and eliminating federal income tax until you get to that level where every dollar beyond that level makes sense to tax you. But until you get to that point, heck, how is anybody supposed to be able to afford some of the basics if you can't even get a decent livable wage? Again, not a radical idea. This is not a suggestion of, the people in the streets a la French Revolution style doing stuff. This is just, hey, I just need to be able to live, put food on my table so that I can actually be healthy enough to go work for you. Your thoughts about these pillars, these ideas from organizations like Patriotic Millionaires?
Well, first of all, I'm so grateful for them and for their organization. They're telling the truth all over the place, and I think it really matters. Listen, I co-chaired the campaign to raise the minimum wage in Minnesota when I was the executive director of Children's Defense Fund. We fought hard to make sure that not only did we increase the minimum wage, but that we also indexed it to inflation. That was a really important part of our strategy so that we knew that every year, right, that people's wages would go up and keep up with the cost of living. And so for the last decade, every January, folks in Minnesota have gotten a raise. In DC, they haven't increased the minimum wage. It's still $7.25 in over 16 years. And to be clear, we also have to talk about the bigger picture. What does that actually mean? That means that if there are folks, right, who are working at like Walmart or Amazon, who are low-wage workers, who also then qualify for public programs like SNAP, we are subsidizing, right, these companies, and then they go back and they spend their SNAP dollars with their employer. That's like double dipping. What if we just paid people a livable wage and they had access to universal health care? We would all be so much better off. And so this is just, things are coming to a head. And, regardless of if we agree on everything, right, we can agree on the fact that is literally like all of us versus extremist billionaires and the folks at the very, very top. And in this election cycle in 2026, I am betting on us. And we are absolutely going to organize and go all across the state of Minnesota. And there are folks who share our values, who are everywhere. We only have to meet them. And that's what this is all about.
So I have amplified the reality that you are truly a public servant. You have devoted most of your professional life towards helping other people and serving in roles that benefit others. I've also asked you this question before, and I think it's worth asking again, especially as you and I take stock of where things stand on November 12th of 2025. Somebody like you could continue to serve the people of Minnesota in a state level, right? And I've been focusing a lot on state, local, and municipal races and urging people to not only pay attention, but to themselves run or be involved. Why is it so important for you to take all of what you've done for the people of Minnesota in that state capacity as lieutenant governor and in other roles locally, and kind of take it now to the national stage when we see people like Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill kind of taking themselves from the national stage and taking it back to maybe a gubernatorial role in their states?
Sure. Well, I think there is value in serving at all levels of government. It's, I've been a school board member, I've been a state representative, I've been lieutenant governor. But now I really think it is that combination of lived experience, knowing what it feels like to be someone on the margins, but also a track record of getting results for working people. That is what I want to bring to Washington, D.C. And to be really clear, I'm not running to make history, but it is about time that we had a Native American woman in the U.S. Senate.
Amen.
And also, there are only 4 women in the U.S. Senate, moms with kids under the age of 18. And boy, don't we know that based on the kind of policy outcomes that we've had. So this is also the opportunity to make sure that we've got, we're fighting for universal childcare, a national paid family and medical leave policy. We need to implement a child tax credit again to lower child poverty by half. These are all things that, I think moms care about, right? Certainly, but that are just good for the economy overall. And that's the fight that I want to bring to Washington, D.C. And I'm so clear, right, that when I go to Washington, I'm not going by myself. And that is the beauty of, this seat that belongs to Minnesotans. I'm not taking corporate PAC money, so I am beholden to Minnesotans. And when I get to the Capitol and I walk through those doors, I want people to know that they are coming with me, because this seat will not go to the highest bidder. This seat will not go to Beltway darlings. This seat will go to the people of Minnesota.
Ergo, the reason why I am such a huge fan. Peggy, where can people go so they can learn more about your campaign and frankly help in any way they can?
Absolutely. So they can go to peggyflanagan.com to learn more about our campaign. You can volunteer, you can contribute. We'd love to have you on Team Peggy.
Well, I am the queen of Team Peggy right over here. It has been always a privilege to have you in my life and to make me smarter and more empathetic and to understand the issues better. And I do agree, if there was something that I would love to uplift, is something you just said kind of in passing a couple of minutes ago, but to have the first Native American woman in the United States Senate would be, we talk about the bamboo ceilings for the AAPI community. And as you know, I'm a huge advocate, and ally of the Native American communities. And I just think it would just be so amazing. So thank you, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and U.S. Senate candidate for the state of Minnesota, for spending time with us. And you're welcome to come back at any time and spend even more time with us. And congratulations on the endorsements. They're huge.
Thanks so much, Katie.
It's good to see you. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.